are the champion, the one that holds the line and finishes the mission. Everything that you want is within your grasp. You wake up in the morning ready to dominate the day, and every step taken is with purpose and integrity. Because you were not put on this planet to live a mediocre existence. You are here to conquer and make the biggest impact possible, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your tribe. This world is a battlefield, and we will be victorious. This is the Norse Mentality.
There's one trap that we need to avoid when we are pursuing a better life for ourselves, and that is allowing our expectations to get the best of us. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when we set a goal, a deadline, and stuff like that, we're missing out on all the progress and victories that we have stacked over the period of time while leading up to this big goal. A good example for this would be a new deadlift PR. We have this goal in mind that we want to pull 500 pounds. Right now we're at 405. So we go into the gym one day, we're like, this is the day. This is the day that I'm going to pull 500 pounds. And you get in there and it barely moves off the floor. And you allow that to get the best of you. You start thinking very negatively about yourself. Your internal dialogue starts to just completely go downwards. You start beating yourself up. You start saying, I'm a weak piece of shit. And it just completely ruins your overall self-worth. When in reality, you start off at 405 pounds, we'll say 6 months ago. And then you hit 420, then you hit 450, then you hit 475, 480. Those are all milestones along the way that you could have taken a step back and celebrated, but instead you just had all of your attention fixated on this one number. And because you didn't hit it that day, you're completely dismissing all of this work that you have put in, all of these victories that you have stacked over the months. There's so many different factors that are involved when it comes to trying to accomplish a mission. Different things will kind of take you off course. In the example of the deadlift, you could have had a piss poor night of sleep. You could have had a super busy day at work that was stressful. You didn't get in all your meals. You're rushing to the gym. And God knows how many other things could have happened. And because of all of those things building up, you were not able to pull this PR. That has nothing to do with your self-worth. What that is, okay, today just wasn't the day. But I've still made a shit ton of progress. I'm still proud of myself. And I'm going to come back in here in a week or so, and I'm going to try it again. And you continue trying it again, and you continue moving forward until eventually you accomplish the mission.
It's almost as if we get too tied up in the specifics, the numbers, the rep ranges, the sets, that we kind of water down the win when we do hit it. The win isn't coming in the gym and hitting exactly what your workout is.
It's icing on the cake.
The win is you made it to the gym, and acknowledging that is much more beneficial than beating yourself up over you not hitting a certain number of reps, sets, and weights.
How many people would just not go to the gym after having a long day, after not getting enough sleep? You still went in and you tried your best. If you tried your best, that is a win as well. We need to take a step back and acknowledge our effort. We need to be proud of ourselves, because that pride in your effort is what allows you to build the confidence to become this version of yourself that you will eventually become by putting in the reps. We're using a gym example because that is easy, but this applies to absolutely everything. I fall into this trap all of the time when it comes to this company. If we are not hitting a certain amount of growth, I will catch myself just completely spiraling downwards. I start getting extremely stressed out. I become hostile towards everybody. And that's no way to live. Just because you have an expectation of how things should be and you allow it to decrease your quality of life and ruin your self-worth, we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? And in all reality, it's not, because we can't control every aspect of life, and every aspect of life does have an impact on us. The only thing we can do is control our internal environment and the effort that we are putting in. Now, there is the other side of the table where you haven't been trying your best. And these situations where the outcome isn't what you thought it was going to be, or it didn't happen as quickly as you thought it would, that's an opportunity for you to take responsibility for yourself and then figure out, what can I do better moving forward? This is a good thing, but so many people will say it's not. They'll try to convince themselves that they're worthless. You just have things that you need to improve on. We all do. If Norse isn't hitting the amount of growth that I want us to, we're not making the impact that I want us to, we're not getting as many new listeners to this podcast that I want us to, yes, that is my responsibility. It falls back on me, but that just means that I have more work to do. And that's what we need to kind of make our personal mantra when it comes to trying to accomplish goals is, okay, it didn't happen. I just need to keep moving forward. I just need to keep putting in the work. I have more work that needs to be done. Notice that shift there, that shift in perspective. It completely changes the dynamic of the entire situation.
I think a big issue that people face when it comes to acknowledging their wins is we kind of live in a society and climate that only shows big victories. And I think that's what people kind of miss out on because they think everything has to be huge. This win has to be just absolutely massive, or it's not going to have the impact that a small win does. When in reality, on a daily basis, the win is just getting out of bed in the morning sometimes.
Sometimes when you're going through a rough patch and you're depressed or whatever it may be, you're just dealing with a lot of stuff. And every part of you just wants to put the covers back over your head and say, fuck today. But instead, you put your feet on the floor. You start doing what you know needs to get done. That is the biggest win you could possibly have. It's never the top of the mountain that's the most enjoyable. That's also not where progress is made. That's not where you're moving forward. It's as you're climbing up. And we need to think about it in that sort of way. The growth happens on the way to the goal. The goal itself is just the end destination.
It's direction.
It's direction. It's like looking at a map. Okay, I'm here and I want to get here. Well, what do I need to do in order to get there? And then once you get there, okay, cool. Guess what happens then? It's on to the next thing. I have experienced a lot of big wins in my life, and I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, none of them have brought me any enjoyment. Now, that's probably something to do with my character, and it is something that was brought to my attention about 2 years ago by a good friend of ours named Manuel. He was talking about how he saw this with Norse and saw this with Norse, and he's like, man, I was just thinking to myself, Andy must be so proud. And I looked at him, I was like, I don't care. And it's because I never took a step back to actually look at what I accomplished. And at the age of 27, there was a lot. But it was never taking a moment of gratitude and being like, wow, I put in the work and I accomplished this. Because in my head, nothing was ever enough. And I think that's the case for most people. Nothing is ever enough. We could have all the money in the world. It's never enough. Every extremely rich person that is financially abundant thinks that way.
The goal you have set for yourself, the peak of the mountain, it gives you a little bit of fulfillment that is very short-lived most of the time because we always want to be chasing something. The fulfillment that lasts and is overwhelming is looking back at the person that you were when you started this journey and comparing it to how far you have came and who you are now.
Well, what do you do when you get to the top of the mountain? You have a look around and you go, wow, that's nice. But what really feels good is when you look downwards at how far you came up and you're like, holy shit, I hiked all the way up here I pushed through, I kept moving forward, and I accomplished it. To me, that's always it. There's always a certain part of a hard hike where I go into overdrive, and that's when it starts getting hard. And there's no better feeling than that. Whenever you dig deep to continue moving forward, there's an energy with that is unmatched by anything else. That doesn't happen at the top. And then guess what? You have a look around, you look at the bottom, and then you see a higher peak over here, and you go, I'm going to go there next. That's the way that we should live, in my opinion. It's always having your sight on something more, because otherwise you become complacent. You don't continue moving forward. And what's the point in living if you're not living to the fullest? That is how you live to the fullest. It's always having your sights on something bigger. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the podcast and you want to represent Norse on a daily basis and let people know what you stand for, you can go to our website and check out the clothing collection. And if something catches your eye, use the code podcast15 to save 15% on your order. Now, we need to take a step back at that as well and look at why. Why is this important to us? Because if we want to feel a sense of fulfillment in that moment of accomplishing an objective, then it has to actually mean something to us. It can't be one of those situations where we were doing it for other people, where we're trying to compete with someone else. It needs to be for us. And when you shift the perspective around like that, that's where gratitude comes in. And that's where that sense of fulfillment comes in, of purpose, of meaning. Buying a new car because your neighbor has one that's nicer than you right now, there's no substance to that. Pulling a new deadlift PR because someone else was deadlifting more than you, there's nothing to that. It's shallow.
It's competition based.
It's competition based. And honestly, yes, competition can be good. That is something that is extremely beneficial with surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, is that you're always trying to kind of catch up to them. And as a result, you're bettering yourself along the way. But it should never be because you want to do better than someone else. You need to be happy for this person. But at the same time, the reason you are doing it is because you want to improve yourself. You want to create a better life for yourself. If we want to have fulfillment and we want to have that motivation to continue moving forward, we need to break it down to its fundamental aspects, which is why. Why am I doing this? Because if you don't have that, then for one, you're not going to continue going forward. But two, once you accomplish it, you're still going to feel empty inside. That is a very bad place to be, because imagine putting in a year's worth of work, really busting your ass to make something happen. Now, while you're busting your ass, you definitely improved along the way. There's a benefit in that. But accomplishing something and feeling empty inside still is a terrible way to live. But it just brings us back to the same point that it's never the end objective that is the most beneficial part. It's the journey along the way where we were building ourselves up, working towards this end goal. That really is what we need to be looking at. And that's the whole point in this episode, is make sure that you're taking a step back and celebrating those small victories. Going to the gym, putting in the reps day in and day out to get stronger, to get healthier, to get better. Reading every day. The list goes on. Sticking to a healthy diet instead of allowing your temptations to get the best of you. It's the effort that we need to be focusing on. It's the small victories that is what's building us into this new version of ourselves that we want to be.
One of the biggest perspective shifts for me was when I showed up somewhere. We'll just talk about the physical for a second. When I showed up to the gym, when I show up to Muay Thai, when I show up to a hike, my self-worth is not based on the performance that I have with those things. If you show up to the gym, anything you're doing, that is already the win. But in our brains, we twist this around to kind of determine what kind of win, like the weight of the win almost. And that's something that our brain does. We try to overcomplicate shit with everything. It's very apparent nowadays. But you just showing up, that is the win. And I want to drive that home with people because we get in our head about this shit to where it's all, well, I made it to the gym, but I didn't do as well as I wanted to. I made it to Muay Thai spar day. I didn't spar how I wanted to. You showed up, and that's a check mark already, right out of the gate. Go ahead and switch your perspective on that, and you'll see how everything else just kind of becomes more enjoyable past that point.
And that's the idea, is to make it enjoyable. Why not? But it's also not falling into the trap of convincing yourself that just showing up was enough. I mean, yeah, it's a big win. It's huge. But it's also easy for people to be like, well, I showed up today. But what did you do? You can show up to work. And yeah, you came into work. That's good. But what did you do while you were at work? What were you doing with your time here? If you show up to the gym and you're just playing on your phone in between sets, not breaking a sweat, not really pushing yourself, that's where we also need to take a step back and be like, how could I have done better? When you go to accomplish this thing and it doesn't happen when you wanted it to, we also have to be able to break it down and be, okay, why didn't I? What could I have done better? What could I have avoided along the way that was going to allow me to actually like accomplish this? Because we do have to have a sense of responsibility here. But it's not allowing it's not allowing the overall effort to be dismissed. It's not allowing the overall idea of not accomplishing it be the end all be all. We still have to make sure that we are taking accountability for our actions, that we are addressing where we could have done better, and then ending it right there. That's the important part. We're not laying in bed beating ourselves up, because then when you wake up, you're going to be depressed. You're not going to have any confidence in yourself. You're not going to have the energy to do what needs to get done. We have to acknowledge where we went wrong, what we could have done better, draw that line, close the book, and continue going. But the whole thing is just avoiding this self-sabotage. That's really the basis principle of this entire conversation, is avoiding self-sabotage at all cost. And that is your biggest responsibility when it comes to accomplishing anything in this life, is being best friends with yourself. If you were to come up to me beating yourself up because you didn't do something, I wouldn't jump in on that and be like, yeah, dude, you're a fucking loser. But how is that any different than how we talk to ourselves? It's the same thing. If you wouldn't talk to your friend like that, then don't talk to yourself in that sort of way either. What I would do in that situation is give you words of encouragement to try it again. Do that with yourself. Don't beat yourself down. Nothing gets accomplished when you are doing that. We should always be trying to pick ourselves up. For one, we should never depend on other people to do it, because they're dealing with their own shit. It's not their responsibility to pick you up. If you're surrounded by good people, they're going to. And that's great. That's absolutely amazing. But at the end of the day, it's not anyone else's responsibility to make you happy, and it's not their responsibility to try to pull you into a certain direction. You have to do that for yourself, and you are capable of doing that for yourself. But it all boils down to how you speak to yourself. It's changing that perspective from a negative one to a positive one. And then just continuing to move forward. It didn't happen today. Well, shit, there's always tomorrow. And there is always tomorrow. And you continue working towards it until it gets done. And then once it happens and you feel a little fulfilled by it, and you go, okay, cool, what's next? You get more excited about that over what's next than you ever will doing the big thing. It's always what's leading up to it. I've never been married, but I imagine it's very similar to that. People, they go all out planning for a wedding. And that is one thing that you should absolutely go all in on, because it's a very sacred, ritualistic process if you do it correctly. You are tying yourself to this other person. You are making it known that this is who I want to be my life partner. I'm going to spend my life with this individual. That's huge. But I can imagine that once the wedding actually takes place and then the wedding's done, you're probably fairly back to where you were previously. Neither of us can speak on that because we've never been married. But, it's like, okay, cool, the wedding's done. Yeah, we're a little bit closer. We have like a little bit stronger connection. We have responsibilities to each other now and stuff like that. That's a good thing. But you felt amazing building up to it. You feel amazing as you're working towards a goal. You feel amazing as you're sticking to a diet and not allowing your temptations in your mind and all these outside influences to get the best of you. That's where you're building confidence. That's where you're building self-worth. That's where you are turning into this new and improved version of yourself. So without being repetitive on this, that's what we need to focus on. Focus on the journey to the top. If things don't go how you planned, take a step back, make an evaluation of what you did, and then develop your plan of attack about how you're going to do better, about how you're going to accomplish this moving forward. But it's definitely not beating yourself up and talking to yourself in a negative way and just looking at all your shortcomings instead of acknowledging all the amazing effort that you put in during the process. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Norse Mentality. This podcast is a byproduct of Norse Fitness. We make clothing, fitness accessories, supplements, and other tools to help you reach your true potential. If you're interested in grabbing something for yourself, you can go to norsefitness.co and use the code podcast15 to save 15% on your next order.